Hi, I'm Dr. Martin Rutherford.
Dr. Randall Gates.
I'm a certified functional medicine practitioner. Lost my train of thought there. I'm a chiropractor since 1979. And today we're going to be talking about weight loss beyond the calories, part 5, the last in our series. Dr. Gates is a
Board certified chiropractic neurologist as well as being a chiropractor.
And today you're going to find out even more why a board certified chiropractic functional neurologist who works with the brain and the nervous system might have an awful lot to do with your being able to lose weight, because we're going to talk about the nervous system and how having certain responses in your brain can cause you to not only not lose weight, but develop some other issues. Well, I guess those other issues are the issues that will contribute to them not losing weight. It's been an interesting series. I think we've gotten a lot of good feedback on this series, a lot of good questions. A lot of you have sent us emails. Dr. Gates has been gracious enough to answer all of them since he's computer literate and I'm not. So this is the last response. If you're interested, we have parts 1, 2, 3, 4. Are on our Hangouts, and I would, if you can't lose weight, I would advise you to look at all of them, because I will tell you the answer is in one of these 5 parts. So today we're going to talk about one that I found kind of interesting. I think it was a big breakthrough for us, period. When we got into chronic pain, we melded our 2 disciplines together, that being functional medicine, which addresses all of the things that most of the internet people are looking up relative to vitamins and supplements and leaky gut and different types of B vitamins and relative to weight loss, all the different supplements and things of that nature, and inflammation, all the things that you junkies out there are really familiar with. The brain, not so much. The brain, most people, when most patients come to us for a thyroid problem, which can have a lot to do with weight loss, or an adrenal problem, which you're going to find out can have a lot to do with weight loss, or a gut problem, which can have a lot to do with weight loss, and this is all on the other videos. They're a little surprised when I say we're working together with Dr. Gates, and Dr. Gates is going to be working with their brain, and they're kind of like, my brain, what's that got to do with my thyroid? What's that got to do with my gut? What's that got to do with my adrenal glands? What's that got to do with me losing weight? I mean, this is what I hear in there.
Right.
Dr. Gates isn't in these rooms when I'm like getting beat up by you guys. But it's critical. It's massively critical. The stress response, I think, I started to say, I think a big breakthrough, at least for me, was when we really grasped the stress response. I mean, everybody out there gets that stress isn't a good thing.
Yeah.
Everybody gets the stress, wears them out. It makes them jittery. They can't sleep. It makes their heart beat. It makes their life miserable. And we kind of got that too. But what we really started to get was a lot of what you're about to learn today. And we realized how it was sabotaging what we were trying to do naturally with these folks and biochemically with these folks, because of the chemistry of the stress itself, which we're going to talk about. And we're going to attempt to do it in lay language here. Okay, aren't we?
Yes,
and if we're not going to do it in lay language, I'll translate. But yeah, and that was a big breakthrough, because we actually put together a stress modification program here, and we have a room. We have a de-stressing room here in our office here in Reno, Nevada. And what it has done is it's really improved our results dramatically, because a lot of things you're going to hear about today, it calms down while we're treating. It calms down the stress hormones you're going to hear about while we're treating the other things like the blood sugar and so on and so forth, and allows that. And you'll understand that a lot better. So this is a big one to me, and I think it's a great one that Dr. Gates put together these programs and what we would cover and the order. I think it's a great one to finish with, because it is the most misunderstood, but it's going to pull together a couple of things that we've said in the first 4. So let's kind of follow our normal format, which is, once we get into the specifics of the brain and the chemistry and the pathways, I defer over to Dr. Gates. And let's start by just doing a little bit of an overview of the stress response and what is it? What is this thing that causes you to go like this and and stay awake at night, worry about things you normally wouldn't worry about, and have a short temper, all this different type of stuff. Now, believe it or not, has a lot to do with the stress response, because it's kind of ongoing.
Exactly.
As opposed to, I think the average perception I get when I'm doing the consults is, yeah, I get angry every now and then, but people are shocked when they find out. Well, not less than before, but there are still quite a few that are shocked to find out that this stress response is going on for them,
right,
24 hours a day, and it's part of the reason that that patient is here.
Exactly.
Stress response.
Exactly. So we have a stress response that can be very advantageous for us. Think of a grizzly bear coming at you. Your body's going to prepare you to fight that grizzly bear or run as fast as you can, called the fight-flight response. Maximally, meaning your muscles are going to contract as hard as they possibly can. Your heart's going to contract as hard as it can to allow you to do a maximal effort. So that's a good thing. We also have a stress response for if we don't have food. So for those who unfortunately are in a state of starvation, the stress response is there to facilitate basically fatty acids, sugar from our body, such that our body can metabolize those things so that we can stay alive, so our brain can still function, things of that nature. However, most of us are not in those acute states all the time. Instead, we're in a chronic state.
So that stress response, to clarify, is probably designed to be activated and stay active for,
well, let's say the grizzly bear example, 20 minutes, or starvation, 30 days. Okay. And usually either you're going to make it or you're not going to make it. Unfortunately, so many Americans are stressed out for 30 years. And a lot of people don't realize that they're under stress, as Dr. Rutherford was alluding to. I'm not under stress. And then you start talking to them, and they work 12 hours a day, and they have 3 kids, and their marriage isn't so hot. And then on weekends, they're going out to their rental properties. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And so
I know who that person is.
So many times we have to be, well, let's just say it this way. What we try to do with our patients is kind of give them a realistic barometer of where their stress levels are at. And we can do that by looking at certain elements of their physiology when we examine them. There are signs in the nervous system that don't lie regarding stress.
They're called pathognomonic signs.
Exactly.
When you see these signs, that person can tell you they're not stressed all they want, but we know they are stressed. And then when you really drill them on it, they go, oh yeah, I guess I'm stressed.
Exactly.
I'm not making fun. This is a big part of you getting better. We're talking about weight loss now.
Yeah. And so with that being said, basically the stress response originates in our brain. We all have a fear center in our brain that's called the amygdala. It talks to a part of our brain behind our eyes called doesn't matter what it's called. Anyways, and then it goes down our spinal cord and it talks to our stress glands called our adrenal glands. They're right on top of the kidneys. And these stress glands or adrenal glands, they make stress hormones. Surprise, surprise. But they make a variety of hormones. And one of the stress hormones they make is cortisol or cortisone. And then another stress hormone combination they make is basically adrenaline. And there are many more nuances to that, but we don't need to go into it. And so when we're under stress, we start to produce these hormones at a higher level than we should. And what the literature is now showing, as it pertains to weight loss especially, is that these chronically elevated stress levels cause chronically elevated stress hormone levels, which can then prohibit somebody from being able to lose weight. And hopefully by the end of this broadcast, you'll really understand the details of why that really occurs. And frankly, a lot of this information is brand new. It's 2015 that these studies are starting to come out, acknowledging the effects of stress on an individual's inability to shed pounds. And I will say in retrospect, some of our toughest cases, this appears to possibly be the missing linchpin, or those cases that had difficulty losing weight, or they could lose 20 pounds, but they couldn't go beyond that.
And not to overstate the obvious, but we're talking to the person who can't lose weight. We're talking to the person who can't go out and exercise and cut their calories. And frankly, I mean, when you talk about the stress, the exercise may also be having a positive effect on that stress mechanism too. But we're still talking about, because I know a lot of you were out there going to say that, so that's why I said that. but we're talking about something beyond that. We're talking about when a person comes into this office, they're interviewed. They're interviewing us, but really I'm interviewing them to determine, is this a case that fits? And when they come in and they say, I can't lose weight no matter what I do, and I've heard it all. I exercise every day. I ride a bike 20 miles a day. I do 12 100 calories a day and ride a bike 20 miles a day, and I can't lose weight. We think thyroid, blood sugar, gut, mostly small intestines and large intestines, and adrenals. Adrenals being this topic that we're talking about. And it is, if you are one of those people who can't lose weight, I will guarantee you that this is a part of it. So and so Dr. Gates is saying that we know that for a long time, but Dr. Gates is saying that the data that's coming out now in the literature is now backing up what we have been seeing for a while, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, it is. It is nice.
It lets people know. So Americans are pretty stressed out.
Yeah, they are.
We're in a 24-hour
society. I mean, we have our smartphones, we have our email. I don't think there's ever been a time in history where a population could be more ADHD.
No, and you said to me, when we talk about general things, you talk about the American population and how they're just in fear, how they're Dr. Gates works with the brain, and he'll just, we've had conversations where we see a lot of people who have autistic spectrum problems, dizziness, vertigo, migraines. We had one yesterday, a young lady who had, I think, dyslexia or something like that. And you see the right brains. Well, she was probably opposite of that, but you'll see the right brains. We see a lot of people with right brains who aren't working very well. That's the fear and the stress that you're talking about.
Well, and as we've discussed it, and many of you have probably been here, I know I have. What do we do in America? We wake up, possibly we're running late, we turn on the news, it's nothing but negative information. Then you go to Starbucks, you get your coffee, that pounds your adrenals even more, meaning it causes your adrenals to produce more stress hormones. And then you go throughout your day. Maybe you get lunch, maybe you don't. You come home, you have dinner, you have kids. You just see this perpetual cycle of being stressed out, and then you fall asleep, and maybe you don't get enough sleep because you're up late, working on your email, watching TV. And then this whole process just repeats itself day after day after day.
Yeah, we said it's crazy. And we're at the end of a recession. Some say we are, some say we aren't. Wherever we're at, there's still economic stress out there. Two family, everybody's got two family, husband and wife seems like having to work. And it's just a stress time right now. It's a stress time. And I think it's the reason that we're seeing an increase in chronic pain patients. A lot of you who have this inability to lose weight may also have some of these other things we've talked about, particularly fibromyalgia, peripheral neuropathy, restless leg syndrome, tremors, things of that nature, because these are also numbness in your face that hasn't been diagnosed as having a stroke, maybe numbness on one side of the body that hasn't been diagnosed as having a stroke. And these are things I hear all the time. And I mean, this is crazy what we're seeing. I mean, this is something that it wasn't that prevalent 10 years ago.
Right. And, we've had a number of cases. We treat peripheral neuropathy, or that's where the nerves start to die and degenerate down in the feet. People get numbness and tingling, as Dr. Rutherford is saying. We've had a number of cases come in where people thought they had peripheral neuropathy, but really they just had anxiety. And because lots of times they'll get numbness around their mouth when they have that anxiety. Same thing with dizziness. We evaluate a lot of dizziness patients. I can't tell you the number of dizziness patients where their main cause was stress and anxiety, because when we're stressed, we don't get enough blood flow to the brain.
Yeah, people say duh, but I hope you're getting that it's a lot more to it than that. And frankly, there's a lot better ways to go about it than taking a Xanax. And I'm not telling you not to take that, okay? I'm just saying, and we're not medical doctors prescribing, but we're just saying there's a lot of effective ways that are not medications that can help. But this is a big part of what we have seen in most of our weight loss patients who have not been able to lose weight. This stress mechanism creating abnormal stress hormones, and these stress hormones going on to create abnormalities in your system that cause you to not be able to lose weight no matter what you do. And I mean, did you feel that you kind of went over a little bit of what the stress hormones do there?
I do. I mean, we can go into more detail.
So long term.
Right. And so just at a glance, the acute phase of stress, as we kind of mentioned, these stress hormones have the purpose of basically mobilizing sugar or glucose from our liver so that your muscles can use that to contract. And they have the purpose of, if they're over 30 days, breaking down your muscles, frankly, so that your brain can survive and your heart can survive from the energy from your muscles.
So hormones are used for one thing instead of the other.
Right.
Or to protect the other. They shift.
Exactly. And then the acute phase where we have a lot of adrenaline, if you're fighting some, person coming into your house or some horrible circumstance, basically that adrenaline will cause your heart to pump harder, pump faster, your blood pressure goes up to get the blood to your muscles. That's the acute phase of stress. However, the chronic phase of stress is where we get these elevated cortisol levels, especially for a long period of time. And what that has been shown to do, it really can imbalance the immune system. So we now know 1 out of 6 Americans have an autoimmune disease. That's where their immune system is killing them. For everybody watching, we've said it before, that's never supposed to happen. We have an immune system with millions of checks and balances to ensure that our immune system kills the bacteria or virus in the sinuses and not us. However, we can only theorize. We have some ideas, but the theories out there include too many antibiotics, too many vaccinations, the food supply, on and on and on, that may be predisposing Americans, chronic stress, for their immune systems to break down and start attacking them. As I mentioned, chronic stress can imbalance the immune system so it becomes unregulated and possibly can attack the person. Now, chronic stress can also be bad for the gastrointestinal tract. The gastrointestinal tract replaces itself every 5 days. It's skin. And what we know of people with elevated cortisol or stress levels is that their skin tends to break down pretty easily. So there's relatively new in the literature, but very well substantiated phenomena called leaky gut syndrome, where the barrier of the intestines, where 70% of your immune system is, can start to break down when we're under chronic stress. Mm-hmm. And that's really pivotal to weight loss. It's pivotal to pretty much everything we treat here.
I'm thinking like what you're talking about. I've studied a lot of Eastern medicine and stuff. And I remember when they would come out with all these studies on meditation and prayer and all that. Mm-hmm. And they would just come with all these scientific, seemingly miraculous, well, how could that be for meditation? I'm just listening to this and saying they would claim all of that thousands of years ago, but as recently as in our lifetime, and including menstrual problems.
Oh, absolutely.
Problems from stress. A lot of women come in here and everybody's on hormone replacement therapy in this country. Everybody's stressed in this country. I found that women really are shocked to find that the stress hormones, if they're the same hormones that are being used as the precursors to making their estrogen and their progesterone, right. and that if their stress levels were better, their menstrual cycles might be better, and whether you make it.
Well, let's go with that.
Yeah, go with it, because I think it's really an important point
for all of you postmenopausal females out there who are taking
really has a lot to do with losing weight.
Who are taking hormone replacement therapy. One of the critical factors they're finding in that whole hot flash literature is basically the adrenal glands and the stress response. In essence, what happens is when the ovaries start to shut down, natural process, you're losing estrogen, the adrenal glands have the capacity to take over because they make things like DHEA, which in a postmenopausal female will be converted to estrogen, progesterone. The adrenal glands actually make progesterone. And so, however, when a female is under a lot of stress, she's going to take her reserves in the adrenal gland and put it to stress hormones, not to DHEA or progesterone. So in that turn of events, then all of a sudden that can be associated with a number of other mechanisms. We did a hangout on it with hot flashes. So that's part of the hot flash phenomenology or phenomena. And we have seen consistently that lots of times when we work with patients who have adrenal gland issues and hot flashes, once we've resolved the adrenal gland issue and the stress response, the hot flashes start to go down. Totally. Without doing anything on their hormones or sending them for HRT or anything of that nature. Now, the other side of it that we've talked about relative to weight loss is the polycystic ovarian syndrome crowd. Upwards of 20% of females have this. It's where they get cysts on their ovaries, but really it's associated with too much testosterone. And that can also be associated with abnormal menstrual cycle lengths. Now, the too much testosterone or excessive testosterone in these females can come from insulin resistance, which we've talked about, where their ovaries will make testosterone at too high of a level rather than making a lot of estrogen, or it can come from the adrenal glands, because some females are genetically programmed such that when they have a stress response, they make testosterone in the form of DHEA from their adrenal glands rather than stress hormones. So that is what Dr. Rutherford was alluding to, saying, the stress can be a huge piece of weight. It can be a huge piece of hot flashes. And we're going to go into some of the more detailed and new mechanisms relative to this as well.
Yeah. So when someone comes in their history, one of the big concerns is their symptoms, their gynecological sound. My period's 21 days, it's 40 days, I don't have a period, and then I have a period, it's too much bleeding, it's too little bleeding. Frankly, most of the time, they come in with those as secondary responses to the other condition that they come in with. And I would say much of the time, that doesn't even need to be addressed once the stress is addressed and once the gut is addressed and once the other things are addressed, because now all of a sudden everything starts to regulate and you start making your hormones properly and you start feeling normal and you don't need the hormone replacement therapy. And again, all that we're gonna get into a minute here. This may be a lengthy setup, but we want you to understand the mechanisms because we're about to get into why this creates obesity. You did have one more thing that you wanted to cover down here: Cushing's versus the stress mechanism.
Yeah, I think this is important because there is a medical disease called Cushing's disease or Cushing syndrome when it's caused by another event, but just let's call it Cushing's, which is where there's too much cortisol in the system. And patients who have Cushing's disease tend to have a moon-shaped face. They tend to have a hump on their back, and they tend to have a lot of obesity around their abdomen, as well as they'll get purple stretch marks. Their skin is really thin. They tend to have diabetes. And basically what they found is that when that cortisol is elevated, blood sugar gets heavily dysregulated. The person gains weight. They don't feel so good. They get a lot of infections, things of that nature. What we're finding is that many Americans who suffer with weight issues, termed metabolic syndrome, which we've defined in other broadcasts, and basically it boils down to when you have obesity around your abdomen, you have high blood pressure, you have high cholesterol, you have pre-diabetes or insulin issues, and your blood's a little too thick. That's the basic overview of metabolic syndrome. But they're finding that a lot of metabolic syndrome patients have the same amount of cortisol as somebody with Cushing's disease, but they don't have Cushing's disease. And so now this new entity is called functional hypercortisolism. And it's a really intriguing phenomena because, again, this ties back into what Dr. Rutherford said. We've found consistently that we have to calm down the cortisol or the stress response in our patients who can't lose weight. Most metabolic syndrome patients have difficulty losing weight that walk into our office. And so just know that your cortisol can be a huge issue relative to your weight loss.
And the takeaway, I think, from that is you're talking about Cushing's being a pathological problem that's there. And most doctors are thinking, wow, pathological problem. There's a problem with the adrenals. It's just driving tons of cortisol. It's killing these people. When you come in with something like metabolic syndrome or stress, that isn't given the weight that it should be compared to a Cushing's.
Right.
And the doctors are more likely to look for Cushing's. They're not as likely to look for a functional problem. But in reality, the functional problem can be as bad as having this pathological problem, which usually requires some sort of a drugs or surgery.
Yeah, and sometimes in Cushing's patients, they'll go and they'll cut out the adrenal gland.
Yeah,
because that's their only solution.
So the point there is stress levels in real life today, at least in this country, probably other countries, can be enormous. And so we hate to beat this horse dead, but this seems to be one of the most difficult things for patients to grasp when we come to the office and I start discussing with them what probabilities of what problems are most likely in causing them to not lose weight. So let's get a little bit more specifically into the stress mechanism and obesity.
Okay, so the new studies are validating that the part of the brain called the hypothalamus, which talks to the pituitary gland, which is the master gland. We'll stop right there. The pituitary makes all of our signals, basically, that send signals out to our hormone producing glands. So the thyroid receives signals from the pituitary gland. Your ovaries receive signals from the pituitary gland. If you're a guy and you have testicles, it gets signals from the pituitary gland. The adrenals get signals from the pituitary gland. And so the adrenals get hardwired signals, just so you know, from the nervous system, but it also gets these chemical signals from your brain as well. So it's called the hypothalamo pituitary adrenal axis.
I'm sure you just lost everybody.
Okay, so let's just call it the HPA axis. And so basically,
that means it's okay.
Yeah, so I'm explaining. So the pituitary is sending signals to your adrenal glands, your stress gland. Simple as that. And so these signals are shown to be upregulated again in people who can't lose weight. And this is all so important because we did this whole series because so many of you walk in here and you can't lose a pound and you're frustrated. You've tried gluten-free diets, you've done the DASH diet, you've done the Ma Pie diet, and nothing is working. And there are reasons why nothing is working. And this cortisol, as Dr. Rutherford said, is probably one of the most exciting ones and we left it for last for that purpose. Because until this is addressed, a lot of our patients don't have a chance of losing weight. Exactly. And so that's where the brain becomes important because the brain is getting signals to send these chemicals to your stress glands. And until your brain is really adequately assessed, in our opinion, you're probably going to have a difficult time losing weight. And frankly, even though we are not completely on the same paradigm as Dr. Amen. Dr. Amen's a psychiatrist and he works with Dr. Hyman. Many of you have heard of him. And in essence, he evaluates everyone's brain who comes into him who has difficulty losing weight from a number of variables. So we say all that to say, yes, your brain again is involved in your inability to lose weight. That has been substantiated in the literature.
So what's the mechanism?
The mechanism is as driving the adrenal glands.
And again, we keep going back to the adrenal glands. One of the things I think people cognite on is most people who are in the alternative mindset and have done all of the research. It's like the adrenals are it.
Right.
And in a way, we're saying that they are. But what you're seeing is most people think they're just stress glands. And what you're hearing is they control your hormones, they control your blood sugar, the hormones can affect your gut, they can damage the inside of your gut, they can affect your immune system. Dr. Gates had mentioned, and maybe he did mention all those symptoms, they can attack your left brain, the hormones can attack your left midbrain, short-term memory loss. And
right, it's really both frontal lobes, yeah.
Both frontal lobes, okay, he's the brain guy on that. But in essence, they almost kind of like balance the whole system. They mobilize the sugar out of your liver, as you were talking about the person who gets stressed, and they're getting the hypercortisolism and they're developing blood sugar problems. So they are a key, but taking an adrenal support at this point in time usually isn't going to have a long-term response.
Right. And we have found that until you address all these other factors, as Dr. Rutherford talked about, it's an exercise in futility. So it's basically a waste of your time, in our opinion, a waste of your money in terms of the supplements. And that's also why we did an overview in this broadcast and we talked about the gut, because so commonly we find that the adrenals and even the brain's response to stress can be calmed down by changing the gut, by working with the gut. Watch that broadcast. Then the thyroid can have implications on the adrenals. That has to be addressed next. Okay. Male and female hormones can be affected by everything and they can affect the adrenals. And then now we're finishing off with the adrenals. So you see how there's an organized flow to this.
So you have to fix all those to get to the adrenals, which ultimately cause obesity more or less through altering blood sugar?
Through a few different mechanisms. Okay. So I would like to get into that. So one hormone we haven't talked about relative to adrenals is aldosterone. Aldosterone is there to help us save sodium into our system. Think if you chop your arm off, you're bleeding, you want to save as much blood volume as you can. Our body has a programmed response to save that blood. And it's called aldosterone. And it causes your kidneys to save sodium. The problem again becomes when we're under chronic stress, we can start to make too much aldosterone because the adrenals are just getting the signals, just like your arm's getting chopped off. And so in doing so, the aldosterone has been found not only to save sodium, but cause insulin resistance. And this is a brand new finding. Exactly. And so that can throw off blood sugar by itself. Also, as Dr. Rutherford alluded to, the cortisol can cause your sugar to mobilize can cause your liver to mobilize a lot of sugar, which will elevate blood sugar.
Which will cause you to not lose, right?
Right. And so all these factors become this self-perpetuating vicious cycle.
And then insulin resistance can create the situation in which in a female, their estrogen can turn into testosterone, which if you have that, you are not losing weight. And most of the women who have come in here have not had that tested.
Right.
They have not had their testosterone level. Even if they have, if you have a little mustache, if you have hair where you want to have it, if you're starting to develop some male-ish type of stuff, you're probably have trouble losing weight, because that's a sign that this whole stress mechanism from the brain to the adrenals, creating these blood sugar issues, and all the other factors creating this strain on your adrenals, creating these blood sugar issues, ultimately do what Dr. Gates said relative to the sodium and the blood sugar, and then ultimately change your estrogen and the testosterone. And you're taking estrogen because you got low estrogen. They do test for that. Yeah, we had came in yesterday. They tested her estradiol, but they didn't test anything else. This is how stress causes an immovable block to losing weight. I mean, of all the things you mentioned, every one of them in and of themselves will stop that person from losing weight.
Absolutely.
And we're talking the dominoes that Dr. Gates just described. Each domino, this one goes, you can't lose weight. This one goes, you can't lose weight. This one goes, you can't. Well, once you've had 3 or 4 or 5 of them go, you're the lady who was sitting in front of me, right? I was a true patient. I was riding her bike 20 miles a day and eating either 16 or 1,800 calories a day. And I think she lost 8 pounds in a year. And then she stopped riding her bike for like a week or 2, and pretty much all of it came back.
Yeah, exactly. And this aldosterone leak is huge, because we really work with patients on bringing down their insulin when they have insulin resistance. And we have found those who are under stress, it's a difficult process to reverse. And it makes sense through this aldosterone mechanism, because until you fix the brain, until you fix those chemical signals from the brain, and until you fix the hardwired signals from the brain in terms of the stress response, your probability of losing weight goes down.
Well, Dr. Gates refers to hardwire, okay? He's saying that it's in your brain, it goes down your spinal cord, the signal, and it goes out to the adrenals. But what he's really saying is, and this is, I think, is something that people need to understand, we're not saying that you are a stressed human being from the perspective that you can't handle life. We're saying that you have an automatic fight-flight syndrome. If you go back to when we talked about 20 to 30 minutes, to the most 30 days, okay? And now you're in this mechanism for years. It's just occurring. And it's something that is almost impossible for you to overcome without becoming a Zen yogi, or without taking Xanax or Prozac or whatever.
Right.
Seemingly, it's not impossible to become. There are a lot of methods that are easier than meditating 2 hours a day, and are better than taking Xanax or Prozac if you can avoid it. And those are the things that we've managed to put together here. I would give Dr. Gates like all the credit for that, putting together a stress modification program that allows that person to get their stress down, so that while you're working on the thyroid or on the gut, those stress hormones are down. And so now when you start treating the gut, you can actually get it to heal. Whereas if you're trying to treat the gut, for those of you who've tried to treat your leaky gut, for those of you who have taken probiotics, and none of this has worked. For those of you who healed your leaky gut and came back 6 weeks later, this is why. Because while you were doing the herbs and while you were changing your diet and getting off of gluten and getting off of grains, your brain was perpetually damaging your gut. So the second that the tissues healed, it literally a nanosecond after you were done with your program, your gut was starting to get destroyed again. And so it really is. I can't even say how huge it is. It's much more. I think it's much more so than even most people realize when they just say, well, I'm stressed, and they kind of generally get that's not a good thing. But this was a big step forward for us when Dr. Gates put together the stress modification program that we have. And it's nothing exotic. I mean, but we do it. And it works, and our patients are in our stress room for about an hour. Yeah. And then
they'll say, I've had so many say, well, I just thought this was a waste of time, but really I found, that was like my hour to relax in the week.
Yeah.
Or twice a week.
Yeah. And that really relaxation lasts through a period of time. The chemicals come down, now the things you do with the leaky gut and all, and the thyroid and all that tend to work. And then you also have a lot of what I call strategies for them to do at home that are very simple. Now, don't try this at home, okay? Because it might make you worse, then you'll yell at me. But it could be like red glasses, or it could be blue glasses, or green glasses. Or we had one patient who went and got rose-colored glasses. Now, our patients do that according to Dr. Gates' recommendations, because he has a way of figuring out the frequency firing of their brain and trying different things. But there's 100 things. There's a method of laying on your back and wiggling your legs like this for how long? I don't know.
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
It's a breathing exercise.
And because of a breathing exercise, and because of neurological connections to that fight flight center, it'll calm it down. And there's just a lot of things that can be done that don't take up a lot of time in your day. And so by putting that stress modification program together, once while the person's stressed out of their mind and it starts coming down, and their other areas are being treated, this stress response starts becoming less and less. And eventually it becomes something that can be controlled in most of our patients without drugs. Right. And with these types of methods that we talk about. But it is that important, Chef. It's not just enough to say, yeah, I'm stressed and I take, well, if you take walks and if you exercise and that cuts down your stress response, that's a good thing. But if you're doing all that and you're not losing weight, the things that we're talking about are there. They are there for sure. There's no question about how many of them are there. We don't know. We don't know until we evaluate the patients. And you have one more thing you wanted to talk about, the 11-beta hydroxysteroid. Right. And again, we're not trying to get too scientific here, but Dr. Gates is like up to the second relative to his research on these matters. And he likes to be very comprehensive in our presentations to make sure we haven't missed anything. So just this last point.
We've talked about in other broadcasts how the fat cells that accumulate when somebody has obesity, it becomes an organ unto itself. It really becomes an endocrine organ. So it's an organ of your hormones. And so your fat cells will produce things like leptin. Many of you have seen that on TV. Do you have leptin resistance? Take this or that. And so leptin is a hormone that feeds back to our brain, telling us when we're full. And we find that patients who have a lot of fat cells, basically they develop leptin resistance. So their brain doesn't know when they're full and they keep eating.
I think I have leptin.
I definitely had it. And so with that leptin resistance, we're also finding that there is an enzyme that's in our fat cells that converts cortisone to cortisol. So in essence, cortisol is the active metabolite that we've been talking about that can create a lot of these bad effects for you who cannot lose weight. And they're showing that people who have more of these fat cells have more of this enzyme, and they do a hyperconversion of what their adrenal gland is producing. So they just send all of it over to active forms of cortisol when they have a lot of these fat cells. And so that's very important too, because now the pharmaceutical industry is trying to figure out how to block that so they can make a medication to make billions of dollars. But in essence, we find that once you start stripping away the fat cells from all these different mechanisms, that in and of itself can help a person to bring down their cortisol and allow them to lose weight.
Right. And the fat cells also change, they aromatize like testosterone.
Yeah, exactly. And they produce tons of inflammatory chemicals. And
yeah. So if you have
they cause your testicles to start making progesterone because they produce a chemical that does that.
This was one of the most mind-blowing things I had ever heard when I was first exposed to this in a lecture, and I was just like, oh my God, this is like, you talk about a vicious cycle gone crazy. Now you have all these other things that go wrong. Now you produce the fat. Now the fat sabotages. Now the fat cells themselves, the adipose tissues themselves actually sabotage and create all this chemical. And if you really kind of understand biochemistry, which some of you probably do, and a lot of you probably don't have degrees in biochemistry, it all makes sense. It all makes sense. But who would have known that all of this was going on? And all of this is so for those of you who feel like, oh my God, I'm weak, I need to put on bootstraps, your husband's getting all over you, your wife's getting all over you, you're overweight, you're not trying. I've had people come in here like these folks who are exercising every day and they're not eating that calories and they're still getting accused they're still getting, oh, the husband or the wife's like, you just need to try harder. And I think you're eating somewhere where you're not telling, oh my God, it's like the fibromyalgia patient. A lot of people don't think that they really have problems, and they do. But this is a tough thing. And I don't know if I think hopefully this was presented in such a way that it makes sense. You have a stress response. That stress response affects your adrenal glands. Most people know the adrenal glands as stress glands. One of the big takeaways from today is they're way more than stress glands. They affect so much metabolism in your body, immune system, blood sugar, gut metabolism, hormonal metabolism, that is what you are dealing with. And then a lot of those mechanisms sabotage your ability to lose weight. Now you put the weight on, and the fat cells themselves become saboteurs. And so it is, this is why it's more than, those of you who've tried all the pills and all that stuff, this is why there's no pill for this. Okay, but it has to be stripped down. You have to find out which factors are involved in your particular case of inability to lose weight. And then those factors have to be stripped down, frankly, in a very organized pattern while managing the stress.
Right.
Would that be an accurate summation?
Accurate, yes.
So that's what we're trying to say tonight. But, we like to, Dr. Gates is a very excellent researcher, and we like people to know, and we try to balance between overwhelming you with data. I'm sure that you have studies attached to this.
Yes.
So the studies that Dr. Gates talked about and more are probably attached to it. We just want people to know that, we're not making this stuff up. We use this in our daily practice. And so we have kind of an ongoing clinical study going here in which we can try things with different people, because we pretty much, by the time people get to us, they've tried everything and nothing has worked. And so it gives us the opportunity to work with them, and we're not doing anything that's going to hurt anybody. So we can try things that maybe, I don't want to say haven't been tried, but try them in a clinical environment where this person's losing weight, this person's losing weight. We're going to have fun all of a sudden. Like I heard you talking about that one guy yesterday, she's lost 48 pounds and now she's hitting a little bit of a wall. And I get that she's going to lose more, and so on and so forth. But you hit that wall, and now there may be one or two or more of these factors still hanging out there. And now you hit that factor, and all of a sudden the weight starts losing again. Patient starts losing weight again, and you can really figure out what's wrong with them. So when they're done, they know what to do to stay off, to keep the weight off. And it isn't necessarily going to the gym, although you can go to the gym, and it isn't necessarily you have to stand on weight scales every day. You just have to get your metabolism working properly. Again, you just have to know what the factors are, get them working again, and then keep doing what got you there in the first place. And it's a doable thing for most of you out there who think you can't lose weight. It is a doable thing. And if you review the other 4 segments that we have done, including today's segment, you will be up to date almost virtually to the minute on weight loss, particularly for that person who doesn't respond to seemingly to anything out there, every weight loss method that there is. So frankly, the people who lose weight with all those methods could do it themselves. They are the calories in, calories out group. Exactly. Okay, there is that group.
These broadcasts are not for them.
Yeah, if you're watching this, I'm guessing you're not one of that group. So
yeah.
So anything?
No, I think you summarized it.
Okay. So that's it. Please let us know what you think of this. Your feedback is important to us. Dr. Gates is always seems to be excited and happy to answer your emails. Occasionally, some of our patients will share, or some of our viewers will share things with us that are kind of interesting. So we're always open to that. I hope this was a worthwhile endeavor, putting these 5 parts together. And I hope it was helpful to those of you who are having this particular problem. So until next week.
Thank you for watching.
Okay.